Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to see you again. And I apologize, first of all, for it being such a long delay in between videos. I had to seek some support and learn a little bit more about doing all of this creation and things like that, so that when I'm putting these out, not only is it the best quality possible, but I'm more focused on what I want to say and the direction I want to go. So I'm grateful for you all. Today, we are going to go back to some very basics. I've shared a lot of my story, which I think is great, but I think a lot of people are really looking to learn more about narcissists, the types of narcissism, kind of the foundation of narcissism. So I'm going to start first with the behavior of narcissists kind of foundationally in relationships before I go into the beginnings and all of those things. And the reason I'm choosing to do this is because generally, if you've grown up in a toxic household that has a narcissistic parent, you are more likely to encounter and be a part of even more narcissistic relationships in your lifetime. And the reason is very simple. It's because you have been groomed and conditioned, and narcissists in their pathology are sociopaths, and they are predators. They are perpetrators of abuse, and like all predators, they know exactly what to look for and usually where to look for it. So it's why you'll see the behaviors lead to the failure of pretty much all of their relationships. So, all right. There's a quote from Charles M. Blow, and it says, "One does not have to operate with great malice to do great harm. The absence of empathy and understanding are sufficient." So as humans, we are made for connection. We are very social creatures, and our health and well-being, our growth, and all of our basic needs are dependent on our relationships with others. Maslow's hierarchy of needs names love, belonging, and safety as the most important needs, along with food and water, which is how important connection and love are in our lives. So if we know all of these facts, then what is it that makes a narcissist so averse to connection? And why are they unable to have healthy relationships? And what leads to the failure of connection with family, friends, and romantic partners? Without exception, our brains and bodies are wired for empathy, cooperation, generosity, and connection. As social creatures, it's our propensity to connect with others and to form relationships. Over time, we grow to understand that relationships require selflessness and vulnerability. They require communication, truth, lack of judgment, and sacrifice. Most importantly, however, is that we must be able to be fully ourselves, and this demands trust, respect, regard, and most importantly, safety. So it is in these vital areas that a narcissist chooses not to engage and participate. In these areas, they actually deny their own biology. Due to hurt and harm of various natures that happened in their childhood, usually very young childhood, narcissistic people began to realize the conditionality of being loved and accepted. Often their circumstances led to situations that were completely out of their control. It demanded that they keep dark secrets and well-constructed lies. And this shaky foundation was formed with an unwritten and unspoken covenant of deceit and manipulation as cornerstones, which therefore negates not only their basic needs, but also the value of others and relationships as a priority. There's a quote about intimacy that I really love, which comes into play kind of with this idea of what we have to have in order to have healthy relationships. People think that intimacy is about sex, but actually intimacy is about truth. When you realize that you can tell someone your truth, when you can show yourself to them, when you can stand in front of them bare and their response is, "You're safe with me," that is true intimacy. That's a quote by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I have found that to be true in my life. With my husband, the minute I was able to finally be completely raw honest with him after he had seen so much of the truth by himself, everything in my life changed. So narcissists are by their choice in nature, and that is a hard thing for people to accept, is that narcissism is a choice. Their behaviors they choose. They know the difference in right and wrong, and the implications of these choices and immorality, and this is what they choose. They choose arrogance. They are selfish. They are stunted in growth and maturity, and they are toxic. Narcissists are notoriously lacking in empathy. They are judgmental. They are just in a constant state of negativity. They're very negligent and reckless. They're irrational, and they exist in a constant comparison. So all told, narcissists are unsafe and they are extremely dangerous. So all of this is well hidden because with narcissists, the only thing for them that counts is what is on the outside and what other people perceive and believe about them. It is not about truth. Relationships with narcissists, it is not about connection. Rather, it's only about how they can feel better about themselves. And they do this in a sadistic manner. They enjoy seeing other people hurt. And it actually gives them a high. Much of this begins with destructive forms of communication. So Leo Tolstoy talks about arrogance, and he says, "An arrogant person considers himself perfect. This is the chief harm of arrogance. It interferes with a person's main task in life, becoming a better person." And that is really the inherent truth of narcissism collectively. So Doctors Gottman, both John and Julie, are world-renowned clinical psychologists and researchers who have specialized in relationships for over 50 years. Dr. John Gottman identified 4 negative behaviors or means of communication that can predict the end of a relationship. And he calls these the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse because they are the relationship killers. These are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. These behaviors are so destructive that healthy relationships don't use them as often and work to repair them when they do. With narcissists, however, these behaviors define their relationships and ensure destruction and failure. And again, this is what they choose. So let's start with criticism. Criticism is generalizing negative opinions about the other person's character or personality. So as opposed to, say, a critique or voicing a complaint or concern, which are both about issues, criticism is actually an attack on the core character of another. It is the annihilation of their whole being. When it becomes pervasive, the victim of criticism feels assaulted, rejected, and hurt, and it often leads to contempt. Contempt is intentionally disrespecting someone else through name-calling, sarcasm, or mockery. Contempt is deliberate meanness. It is disrespect. It is ridicule. It is to mimic or utilize mocking behaviors of the other person, such as eye rolls or scoffing. Contempt makes the other person feel despised and worthless, and it allows the perpetrator to feel a position of moral authority over them. Research shows that the connection of contemptuousness and weakened immune system that leads to diseases. Contempt is fueled by long-standing negative thoughts about another, which then explodes in an attack of the perpetrator on the victim from what they believe to be a position of relative superiority. So if you've watched any of my videos, seen any of my interviews, read any of my writings, you will recognize that from birth, and actually I believe from the womb, the contempt and criticism really was all I knew. It was the only way that I identified anything in the world. These relationship killers were really the crux of all the treatment I received from the womb and therefore from birth. I knew that I was hated. I knew I was worthless. I knew I was rejected, neglected, and despised. And while I've not been in contact with my family of origin for over 5 years, these attitudes have remained the same in the father of my oldest son, who is incredibly abusive, and he's projected this also onto my oldest son. And my middle son is actually living with my sister, who is also incredibly abusive, and these have impacted them, their mental health, their self-esteem in just absolutely terrible ways. So the cycle of abuse is continuing. So the third is defensiveness. This is making excuses for behaviors or blaming the other person. And defensiveness is often in a response to criticism. When we feel unjustly accused, we want to play the innocent victim, and therefore we begin to seek excuses. But this communicates an unwillingness to take responsibility for our mistakes, and then that in turn evokes another defensive response from the other person, who then reverses the blame. Defensiveness only escalates conflict because it only serves to blame the other person, and it eliminates any hope of compromise and collaboration. And then the fourth is stonewalling. Stonewalling is being quiet and unresponsive, and this is usually in a response to contempt. So stonewalling occurs when the listener withdraws from interaction, shuts down, and quells all response. Often those who are stonewalling will make evasive maneuvers. They will tune out. They will pretend to be very busy. They will turn away, or they begin engaging in obsessive or distracting behaviors. Stonewalling is the result of feeling psychologically flooded and overwhelmed, and this creates the inability to discuss anything rationally. So there are solutions and antidotes to these four horsemen, which I will be going over in the future. For right now, I just want to focus on the inability of long-term healthy relationship making. So all of these behaviors in narcissism reinforce the utter lack of empathy, understanding, and safety. And without these basic biological responses and behaviors, there is no intimacy. And without intimacy, there can be no healthy relationship. Rather, the perpetrator continues to engage deliberately, knowing the hurt and harm being caused, allowing for continued delusion of superiority and denial of all of their personal accountability. This is moral turpitude. It is anti-relationship, it is anti-social, and it is malicious. And a final quote that speaks about self-absorption. It says, self-absorbed people only think about what makes them feel good at the moment. They don't have any respect or regard for anyone else. And then they wonder why all of their relationships fail. So I'll keep going into more about trauma bonding and flying monkeys, and more about, specific types of narcissism and what it looks like. But if you're in a relationship, I hope that this makes you understand some things, and then we'll go into what this looks like on the other side, what it looks like to be healthy. Take care, take good care of yourself, and stay positive in your hope for healing. I'll talk to you soon.